Welcome to the show. Hope you had a good weekend. Going to start with something a little different today. I've received a lot of emails lately, especially I think because with the book out, there are people who are hearing about me from reading the book and not the show. And so I've been getting asked the question, what exactly are your political beliefs? Yes, you're on the left, but can you really lay it out? Where do you stand on different issues and different principles and ideas? And I think that this is an excellent opportunity to kind of lay it out and sort of like this will be what I can refer people back to in a context where I've been critical before of those who just want to talk about principles, 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 ignoring difficult policy decisions. I have a chapter in the book about avoiding these philosophical black holes for two reasons. Number one, if I tell you my values are liberty, individual autonomy, and egalitarianism. What does that really say in 2025 about what policy should be? So one reason that I favor an approach of always talking about our beliefs in the context of policy is that the beliefs alone don't actually tell you what policy you should support or oppose. And secondly, we have right now in the American right wing a movement that claims certain virtues and principles, but then they abandon them immediately when those are politically inconvenient. So for those reasons, in the book, I've said, don't get sucked into the black hole of exclusively talking theoretically, abstractly about principles. So I'm going to talk a little bit about principles and policy and kind of lay out where I am. The big picture is I consider myself an anti-authoritarian, socially responsible, pragmatic progressive. Oh my God, David, that's such mumbo jumbo. Yeah, it is. But the point here is just saying I'm on the left, especially as left and right have become pretty useless shorthands for political beliefs right now, is kind of meaningless. So I'm going to lay it out for you. When I say I'm anti-authoritarian, what that means is that I favor libertarianism, but not capital L, okay? Not the Libertarian Party. What I mean is on the spectrum of authoritarianism to libertarianism, both lowercase, I believe we opt for the more limited but effective government, meaning I want to be able to make a clear case as to why I think government should be involved in certain areas. We need government to protect civil rights. We need government to provide essential public goods and regulate markets where necessary without going any further into controlling people's lives where the government has no business being. So in that sense, I'm anti-authoritarian. I'm a progressive when it comes to ensuring a baseline of dignity for all. What do I mean by that? Food, healthcare, rights, and opportunity. We need government involved there. I'm a libertarian in my attitude, which is I am deeply opposed to authoritarianism. I'm against overreach by governments. I'm against ideological rigidity, and I'm against coercive systems of any kind, except where they are necessary in societies that are, quite frankly, bigger than 150 people based on sociological and anthropological data. I support a version of capitalism that has guardrails, that defends equality of opportunity and global cooperation by consent, but I'm against purity politics. I'm against forced collectivism, which is why I'm not a socialist. So I see my politics as pragmatic, anti-authoritarian, and predominantly rooted in the real world. Now, let me give you some principles. Number one, I see government as a tool, not as a savior. So we should centralize certain societal and economic activities when necessary, either for reasons of scale or of justice. When we talk about should we have a bunch of mercenary armies or should that task, the military, be centralized for the government? I believe that for scale and justice and sanity, we should just have one military that the government runs. Education, healthcare, etc. Okay. But I want the government staying out of areas where society can self-organize pretty effectively, and I think markets are okay there. And that gets me to principle number two, capitalism with exceptions and safeguards. My view is that markets work well in a lot of areas. tech, consumer goods, etc., if they are properly regulated. But healthcare and education, I see as public goods and not commodities. So I want government involved there. Third, I am an advocate of equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. We have normal distribution. Imagine a bell curve. In any aspect of life, we expect normal distribution. Outcomes will vary and will be normally distributed along this curve. So, what I want is to eliminate systemic barriers, to get rid of rigged rules that don't really provide equality of opportunity. That's my focus. Number 4, on free speech and being against coercion. I don't consider myself a free speech absolutist, but I basically want to not restrict speech as far as governments are concerned. And also, we have to accept that speech has consequences, which are also speech. This is one of the areas where a lot of these free speech right-wingers get mixed up, which is they have one version of free speech for the speaker, and then they want to limit or constrain the speech of those reacting to that speech. Speech has consequences, and it might be, I'm not going to do business with you anymore. That's a form of speech, etc. I am against ideological enforcement, and I'm against purity tests on all sides. Number 5, dignity as a baseline. No one in a wealthy country should go hungry, be homeless, or go without health care. So we need a strong safety net. It's not optional. It's one of the sort of parameters of social democracy, regulated capitalism as I see it. 6, international cooperation without imperialism. I favor alliances. I favor treaties. I favor shared action. I am against acting as the world's self-appointed enforcer, spreader of democracy, or policeman. Number 7, and if you've read my book, you know this, I'm about reform over revolution. I want to fix broken systems instead of giving people the idea that by tearing it all down, we will get to some utopia. You really don't want to burn it down unless you know exactly what you're building and who will do the building. Many times the burn it down ends up in the wrong people rebuilding it. It ends up being even worse. Number 8, I am consistent in my anti-authoritarianism. I'm against strongmen. I'm against dictators. I'm against centralized coercion. And as a result of this, I also am against imposed socialism, forced collectivism. I would welcome individual businesses choosing to organize as worker co-ops, etc. But much like we see in the successful economies of Denmark and Sweden and others that I talk about in the book, I don't want a government to come in and impose we are going to collectivize or socialize. Now, in terms of what I support versus what I oppose, in terms of policy in a lot of these areas, okay, government's roles that I think are valid. Public health care, yes. Civil rights protection, yep. I believe in progressive taxation. I don't believe in central planning or government control over most industries. With markets, I want regulated capitalism with real competition and innovation. I don't want unregulated monopolies, which is often what capitalism turns into. And I don't want healthcare as a profit-driven market. Those are examples. When it comes to equality, I want anti-discrimination laws, educational access, and safety nets. I don't want quotas without merit or forced equality of outcome. Doesn't work. Just simply doesn't work. Civil liberties, free speech, rights to protest, privacy protections, not fringe interpretations of cancel culture, state censorship, or ideological silencing. On policing and surveillance, I want police reform, judicial oversight, de-escalation practices to be a bigger part of policing. I don't want militarized police. I don't want mass surveillance. I don't want warrantless spying. On immigration, I favor legal pathways to citizenship. Skilled immigration probably needs to increase to the United States. I am not an advocate of so-called open borders, which we don't have. We need to also consider that these mass deportation schemes will be economically disastrous, aside from whatever your moral and ethical feelings are about them. On culture and identity, I recognize identity in history. So people's identity brings a unique perspective, and that should be considered. I don't want identity-based gatekeeping or the exclusion of groups. Foreign policy, NATO and alliances, aid to allies, a diplomacy-first approach, I favor. Spreading democracy by force and unilateral military action, I'm typically against. Authoritarianism, I always said, voluntary cooperation and pluralism over dictatorship, over forced socialism, and over ideological dogmatism. And finally, I don't believe in one-size-fits-all answers. I believe in the principles I've told you: human dignity, civil liberty, shared responsibility, the value of voluntary systems over coercive ones. But also, once society gets beyond 150 people and certainly beyond 1,000, you need a central taxing authority. You need central law enforcement. We just need these things at a certain point. So I'm a progressive in goals. I'm a libertarian in the sense of being anti-authoritarian. And I'm sort of grounded in the idea that it's not freedom versus fairness, the way that a lot of right-wingers talk about. Freedom depends on fairness, and fairness depends on freedom. These things go together. That's my view. Those are my principles and how I would apply them to policy. There's a lot more about that in my book, The Echo Machine. And thank you to the more than 300 people who have already left reviews. The reviews are critical right now. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Goodreads. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, I will finally have data as to how this first week of book sales went. Optimistic, cautiously optimistic, thanks to everybody who reviewed already. After researching, writing, refining, The Echo Machine, my book, is finally out. This is not just a book about how American politics got so broken. It's also about what's happening right now and what we can still do to stop things from getting worse. Trump's been back in power. The results have been even more catastrophic than many feared, with targeting of political opponents and gutting democratic institutions, laying the groundwork to even further consolidate power. But the thing is that none of this is inevitable. The same forces that brought us here can be countered if we understand how they work and what to do about them. And that's what The Echo Machine is all about. Some say that without corporate media backing, books like this can't succeed. I think we can prove them wrong. You can get The Echo Machine right now at davidpakman.com/echo on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible, Kindle, or by calling any local bookstore and asking them to order it. This book is more important than ever. If you care about what happens next, and I do, check out The Echo Machine today at davidpakman.com/echo.